and we really appreciate it. But this evening, I'm going to talk about the research project that I'm doing right now. It's funded by Department of Energy. Is looking at building wind farms in Lake Erie. Some of the unique opportunities associated with it, and some of the engineering challenges associated with it, and what we are doing in our university through research, trying to find solutions to these challenges. All right, here's a beautiful picture of an offshore wind farm in Europe. Okay. I mean, in Europe, they are probably a few years ahead of us in terms of developing offshore wind energy. And if you go driving along the coast of Denmark, Germany, and a few other European countries, you will see this type of picture there. So why are we developing offshore wind energy? Why can't we just do it on land? Okay. What are the potentials here in the area? So here, offshore, this figure shows that offshore energy in terms of the capacity over the last few years. Okay. It started relatively new in Europe. Initially all of the, as you can see, the green bars are the project in Europe. You can see all of the green initially is in Europe, and only 5 years ago it's starting to be developed outside of Europe, first in Asia, and in the U.S. we still have not a single project finished yet. It's still at the development stage, but it developed pretty quickly. And 5 years ago, it's about 3 gigawatts, and now it's more than triple that number now. Okay. In our country, there has been a pretty major push to develop offshore wind energy for a number of reasons, and there are certain goals set by the Department of Energy. First, about 20% of the energy consumption, electrical energy consumption in the U.S. will come from wind by year 2030. Of course, there are still major technical challenges to reach that goal. But that 20% of electrical energy cannot be just produced by onshore wind turbines. Significant amount will come from offshore wind. The reason is there are great potentials of offshore wind in terms of capacity. For example, in Lake Erie, right here, the total capacity is about 70 gigawatts of wind energy if you use the optimized design and place the wind farm out in Lake Erie. What is 70 gigawatts of energy means? I check the capacity right now, the total capacity in the whole state of Ohio is about 70 gigawatts. So potentially, on paper, if we develop all the wind energy, Lake Erie is enough to support the whole state. Okay, and because this wind farms is pretty close to the shore, where most of our manufacturing facility is in Northeast Ohio, so it's the transmission distance required is pretty short. Okay. But right now, frankly speaking, offshore wind is not competitive yet in terms of price. So you need a government subsidies through tax credit and other incentives. Because right now, the cost is about 25 cents per kilowatt hour. If you compare that with coal, with gas, and generate electricity, that's too high. So the goal is to reduce it to about 10 cents per kilowatt hour to make it to be competitive with other type of electricity. Okay. So why we want to develop offshore wind energy instead of onshore? Because you know, so offshore be higher in terms of foundation, in terms of design, in terms of installation. So there are a number of advantages of offshore wind. The first one is the wind speed is higher. Okay. Here, for example, right now there's no wind if you look outside. So probably our wind turbine there is not moving at all. But if you go out in Lake Erie, you can hardly ever find a time there is no wind. It's always there some wind. And actually, about a month ago, I will show you some picture. We go out in Lake Erie to collecting soil samples. And one day we receive a phone call from the company doing the test saying, oh, the wind there is too strong. We have to get the barge back in the port. What is going on? Here there's no wind, but out there, apparently the wind is too strong for doing the test there. So most of the time, in the lake, you will get plenty of wind there. The velocity typically is 20 to 100% higher than wind speed on land. Also, it's more steady. So most of the time, you have wind blowing constantly, rather than on the land. Sometimes you have wind, sometimes you don't. And in terms of velocity distribution, which is called the wind shear, typically is more uniform than on land. Well, on land, near the ground, typically the wind velocity is lower, and as you go up, you have a certain type of distribution going in a tall place. The wind velocity will be higher. Sometimes, if the curve, the grading of the wind velocity is too high, actually create some issues to the structure. So in order to get that type of wind velocity to generate the power, you need to have a taller tower onshore. Also, one of the major issues of developing onshore wind energy is the complaint typically received from residents about the noise the wind turbine generates. I mean, a small magnitude of noise in a typical wind turbine. If you go near the wind turbine as it rotates, you can hear it. But some people, at least they claim to be more sensitive to that kind of noise. So there has been quite a few lawsuits in places like in Kansas and Iowa, where there are lots of onshore wind turbines. And actually, I think there's at least one case the wind turbine has to be stopped because the residents complain that noise make them dizzy and have headache. But when you go offshore, there's no resident there. Okay, so there's no such issue. Okay. And also, because there's no such issue about the noise pollution, so typically you can let the wind turbine go at a higher speed. And then for the offshore wind turbine, because of the wind velocity is higher, the quality is higher, so you can use larger single turbine. And right now, the largest one is in operation is about 6 megawatt per unit. And in the lab, they already start to evaluate or developing single unit as high as 10 megawatt up to 12 megawatt. So it's pretty big wind turbine. Okay. And also, if you look at in terms of the distribution of major industrial centers, most of them are pretty close to either the Great Lakes or the coast. So the wind farm can be pretty close to the users, and that would reduce the cost of transportation, so transmission. So right now, here, this one shows what is the situation right now with the offshore wind power's cost. Right now it's about 22 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour. The target is first by year 2020 to reach 10 cents per kilowatt hour, and then by 2030 go down to about 7 cents per kilowatt hours. By that, if you can reach this level, then you can be competitive with other types of electricity, and then you don't need the tax credit and other subsidies from government.
Will larger installations or more installations bring that price down?
Yes, of course. There's a scale of the economy of scales. Yes, definitely.
What's the biggest driver?
The biggest driver we will show in later the table to show what are the major costs. Yeah. Okay. So here it shows in terms of energy, wind energy resources distribution in the U.S. Okay, and the red is the best. Okay, so I'm sure there are some very good places like in Colorado, and then a couple of Wyoming, etc. The red spot. And in Colorado, there are already lots of onshore wind turbine there. Okay. And then the Great Plains, the purple sort of is the pink is pretty good, and some of the purple. But you can see all these are pretty. These are mostly agricultural states. Okay. Your manufacturing centers here and your urban centers here or here, you can see there that don't have many wind resources. In the south, there's very little. Okay. So yes, you can generate lots of wind energy in places like, well, right now, the state of Iowa probably have the highest capacity, and Texas has the highest capacity of wind installation. But the other places, the transmission line has to be pretty long to get to a user center. On the other hand, all the Great Lake region have excellent wind resources, okay? And we know all the major industrial centers, manufacturing centers, activities in this area. So that's why the Great Lakes is a pretty attractive place to develop wind energy. There's another reason. Okay, here this is the data from MIT, shows the fine particles, the pollution of fine particles produced from power generation. The red ones, the bad one. Okay. This region where you see the high concentration of fine particles in air, most of that is produced by coal power plants, coal-fired power plants. In the Ohio River Valley and Tennessee Valley, including Ohio. Now, all these fine particles is very. There's medical research shows that it is pretty harmful for human beings. It can cause other type of disease. Okay. And fine particles can be, the not necessarily carbon, can be any residue from coal burning. It depends where you get the coal. On the other hand, you can see we have great, wind resources in the Great Lakes, and this region traditionally use coal-fired power plants. So there are a number of advantages if we develop offshore wind in Great Lake region, especially in Lake Erie. The reason is, first, most of the infrastructure for power transmission, like the grid, the substation, is already available. as we are going through the transition of retiring old coal-fired power station or old nuclear power station, there will be extra capacity available, which is already there. And that, of course, is another major, pollution if you go from coal to renewable energy. Yes, definitely. And also, Lake Erie has one advantage over other Great Lakes is the water depth is relatively shallow. It's only about 20+ meters, and that makes the cost of design foundation go significantly down. Okay. And then we have plenty of port available that can handle the installation. You need large barge, you need placing places, you have all of that. And since this region is the manufacturing center, so many of the supply chain manufacturers are already here, logistics, no issue. And also there's been pretty strong public support for this. And another major advantage in comparison to East Coast to West Coast, fresh water. Fresh water were more kind, more gentle to structures, okay? Both to the wind turbine, the blade, and the power structure and the foundation. Because when you have salty water, it can damage, create rust on your coating, on your metal, and on your concrete. So fresh water is a kind of more favorable for these structures. So here's the plan. You probably have heard that LeadCo is the entity that has been founded by DOE to look at this so-called demonstration wind farm. Will be about 7 miles offshore in Cleveland, and the plan for the first phase is to develop 5 to 6 units out there. Each unit will have about 3 megawatt power capacity. It's a Siemens manufactured wind turbine there. Here's the crate where you have the water intake there. Yeah, so it's about double the distance. So you can hardly see it on the shore.
How far is that from the shoreline?
Yeah,
Yellow line is 7 miles.
7 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the distance from the blue line to the shore of where it says Great Lakes? Just first comes straight down for the shore. What is that? Just climbing. That's a 5 mile crib.
Yeah, this is the crib. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, here is about.
You're saying the yellow line is 7 miles.
7 miles. Yeah.
And what is the distance from the blue line down to the 8 miles? That's less than 5 miles, 7 miles.
Here. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, this is about the same. Yes. Not much difference. So in terms of, this is the demonstration project. The true utility scale project will be even further out, okay, on the east side. So here are the 5 possible utility scale project. Each will have about 500 megawatt capacity. So 5 of them altogether is 2.5 gigawatts. So that's pretty significant. It will be further out, close to 20 miles out there, and it will be further east. So in terms of the infrastructure for the project, it's already there. These are existing substations and also the power grid, and some of the old nuclear power station, and also the coal-fired power plant along the shore. And as I mentioned earlier, some of them will be retired. Couple of them is already retired. Some of them will be retired in the next few years. So now here comes the major thing, the cost. In terms of the comparison between onshore and offshore typical wind project, okay? In terms of wind turbine, onshore, most expensive part, for typical project, 75 to 75%. But offshore, it goes down to 30 to 50%. Since the wind turbine is the same cost, so if you do a comparison here, you can see the offshore in terms of cost is probably double the onshore one. And then in terms of foundation, onshore is 10 to 15%, and offshore go to 15 to 25%. And then you have to have cable connections, and this one, onshore is hard to say. Depends on where are you going to put it. But for all the offshore ones, it's now next door to your substation or grid, so you have to build the cables under the lake bed and connect it. Or in the case of offshore into the sea, you have pretty long cable connections. So that one can be also pretty expensive. Onshore, the installation is relatively straightforward. The equipment, you can quite easily mobilize. Offshore, yes.
Sure. What's the average depth of the water for all your numbers, sir?
Oh, this one is
30 feet.
Yeah, this is
You're not talking superior. You're not talking the ocean.
No.
You're talking
that one.
Shallow spots like Erie.
Yeah, this is what we have right now. So most of it is relatively short, shallow water. We're not even thinking about the floating platforms. That is we don't have this kind of utility scale project yet.
They say space ain't clear like Erie.
And then there are others. Actually, one of the major costs that kind of surprised to me is get the permit. Because there are so many counter lawsuits. Anytime you have a wind project, it's kind of the cost can be pretty high. This is why initially when we go to all the wind conference, most of them are supported by law firms. It's kind of surprised why the law firms interested in that, because both sides need to use lawyers. Yeah, here comes the more technical part, which is what we are doing. Is look at the foundations. It depends on what kind of local conditions you have. We have different type of foundations. And the onshore, relatively simple. You either have a caisson, the concrete foundation there, so it's relatively easier to do. And then we'll go to shallow water, 10 to 30 meters, which is most of the wind project right now. To use either gravity foundation or monopiles, etc. You can build that. Now, the technology that's being developed right now is to go a little bit deeper water, it's 30 to 50 meters. Then you have to use tripod or multiple pile type of foundation. And then eventually you want to go to deep water, then you have to use floating foundation. So quickly, talk about different type of foundation. Here is a typical monopile. Inside the monopile, you can put your service elevator inside, and it's pretty big. You need a pretty large crane to install it. So that means if you go out, you need a pretty large barge there. And this is how it is installed. Sections of the monopile, you put it out there. Make sure it's straight enough, go down vertically, and then you use a pretty big hammer to it. Used to be, the monopile is about 4 meters in diameter, 4.5 centimeters in thickness, and now you can go much bigger now. There are monopiles as big as 6 meters, thickness of 6 centimeters, and then you hammer it down. And once it's installed, you then put your transition piece, a little bit bigger, sit on the top. Then here you have a platform where you can put some equipment in there, and also you can do service through that, and then your power on the top, together with your blades and your generator, your transformer, etc. on the top.
So do you geological study in the bed that drives the
Right. Yes, we have done here, so I will show some of them. And then when you go to a little bit deeper water, then a single pile definitely is not enough to and keep the tower structures vertical. So you have to increase its lateral stiffness. So you have to use multiple piles. And if you have even shallow water, sometimes you can use gravity-based, and that is a massive reinforced concrete foundation. You can prefabricate it and transport it to the site and install it, put it in a lake bed, and then build up your upper structure. And then right now it's still at the research stages. It's a floating foundation. We have used this inside. Of course, it's a hollow there, and so it's floating in water, but you have to anchor it to the ground, to the bottom of the sea, so that it won't go with the current.
Has anybody developed, or maybe you might ask, artificial island, something that just floats?
Right. Yeah. These are still very early. People are just exploring the idea. One is sort of artificial island. There's a big advantage of this. So you can be moved to where the wind source is, and if there's a hurricane or typhoon comes, they can move it out of the way, of course, very slowly. But there are still lots of technical challenge, cost issue, etc. But these are very early. So coming back to us, okay, I mentioned a number of advantages in the Great Lake areas to build wind farms, but there are also unique challenges. Fresh water, cold weather, this is what you may encounter. Ice. Ice out there is not static. It's moving in one direction. So you can pile up in front of a structure. Any rigid structure you put out there, the wave, we're starting to push in one direction, and then the ice were starting to break up, and it will pile up in front of the structure, and it can create a huge load on it. So how do you design structures that it can support, can resist this ice load, become a major challenge. So here it shows the ice in Great Lakes. It's moving, you create ice ridges like this. And here you have a little bit of section, there's no ice, water, and then move in this direction, so pile up ice, and sometimes form ice ridge. Some of the ice ridge, actually, a couple of cases, the ice ridge, you don't see it, but under this, the water touch the lake bed. Okay. So it's huge. Okay. And imagine this type of structure pile up on your power or the foundation of your wind turbine, and it creates a pretty challenging design requirement, design node. Well, you may ask, okay, what's the big deal? We have built structures in near North Point, Arctic Sea. Here this is one oil platform off the north coast of Canada called Monopac. Was built by Exxon in the 1970s. So the technology is out there. You can build this type of structure. As civil engineers, we have built bridge piers across icy river in Alaska, Canada. So what's the big deal? Over there, the ice load actually is even bigger. The structure is even larger. So here, for example, this is a monopag, close to 100 meter long, 100 meter wide. The water depth is also deeper, about 30 meters deep. And the design ice load, 700 meganewton, huge. What the difference is, depends on what are you producing. There, their hope is to produce oil and gas. If they are successful, cost is not the issue. I don't know how many of you remember the recent platform in Arctic Sea by Shell. How much did it cost? $6 billion. For an oil company, that's nothing. But it's probably totally not nothing, because this time I think Shell will lose some money because of that. But for wind turbines, you are not producing oil and gas. So you have to be very sensitive to the cost. So here, this is through the research project, Professor Zeng from material science and engineering department installed a video camera on the crib. Take the picture of during the winter time how the ice is forming and how the ice is floating in Lake Erie. You can see here it's Cleveland. So this is when a couple of years ago we have a very mild winter. The ice sheets in the lake moving, and here you can see this is the ice. There is still water. So ice is moving in one direction. So for civil engineers, we have to solve all these problems associated with a typical wind turbine structure. We have to look at, dynamic soil-water structure interaction. There's dynamic wind load, there's wave load, there's ice load, and all these dynamic load can create very challenging environment for the structure, for the foundation. So that's what we need to design. And how we can reduce the ice loading on the foundation become a very important challenge. You probably see the ice combs, the inverse ice comb or normal ice comb. These are the ways to reduce ice loading. But also to find the right type of foundation is also very important. And once you design a structure or you build a structure, you have to monitor it. Because if there is something happen to it, your generator, your transformer is all set at the top. But they're not very tolerant to, especially to tilting of the structure. And for example, in England, they built a number of offshore wind farm. In one place, they found that the tower structure tilted by about 3 degrees. And to push it back, each one of them costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And of course, also to make it competitive, you have to reduce the cost of foundation. So developing new type of foundation was very important, and then all the others. Okay. Give you a simple example, because the tilting of the foundation can create all kinds of problems. I'll give you one example. This one everybody knows. Only about 6 meters tall. It tilted by 5.5 degrees. So the center is offset from the vertical line at the bottom of the center by about 5 or 6 meters. So you can see this clearly. This is a foundation problem. But if you have a wind turbine, sometimes from the bottom to the top, looking at some of the largest wind turbines in the future, it can be as tall as 180 meters. Below water level, above water level. And if you tilt it by 1 degree, you can hardly see it. 1 degree, I don't think anybody have an eye good enough to see a 1 degree tilt. But the opposite here can be 3 meters at the top. Imagine all the heavy equipment is set on the top there. and it's going to create a major problem for the structure as well as for the operation of the equipment. So here's the project right now. Studied. It's about 7 miles off the Cleveland shore. So this is approximately the location. I think it's probably somewhere here. This picture is taken on the top of the P tower. Okay. On the shore here, if you're standing here, how do you see that? Okay. And it's one of the 7 offshore wind projects received the first phase. Each one of them is $4 million from DOE. And then DOE down selected 3 out of the 7 for the crew demonstration project, really to put the wind turbine up. And this one was not selected, but because it ranked number 4. So DOE still give another $2.8 million to ask the project move forward, just in case one of the top 3 did not go forward. And right now, 2 of the top 3 have some issues. So there still may be the possibility that DOE will fund this project for full scale. Okay. So yeah, the question: did we take soil samples out of their geological and geology? Yes. Here's a couple of years ago, a barge was sent out there, to take samples. The samples right now is in our lab, from the topsoil to the bedrock at several locations of the for the demonstration project. And because of the second phase of funding, so the IDCO hired another contract, went out there, did more detailed study, measuring the strength of the soil, the bedrock. So this is on another barge that using more sophisticated equipment to test the site for the potential project. And then they take quite a lot of soil samples. Right now, it's all in our lab. We are doing the geotechnical test to measure the property of the samples. So now let me go to a couple of possible solutions to the foundation. Traditional monopile, typically at this kind of water depth, actually is a pretty good solution. But because of the ice load here at a pretty tall place, you think about the foundation is about 20 meters. So below the topsoil, and then the water depth is another 20 plus meters. And then your ice load is here. So it's already 40, 50 meters to your point of support here. And it can create a huge bending moment. So if you study the strength of materials, that is not good for the structure in terms of design. So you need to increase the lateral stiffness of the structure. So one possibility is to use what is called a friction well foundation. So the friction well foundation is you have a traditional pile, a monopile, and then you put a large ring on the surface of the ground. You fill the ring either with gravel or with concrete, and then that one will set on the foundation soil. And as you can imagine, it can improve its lateral resistance quite a bit. Okay. And there was one example of a relatively small friction ring used in Europe, okay, but it has not been used in wind tower. So for us, then we have to find out, does it work? Okay, so we did quite a lot of laboratory tests, small-scale model tests using the centrifuge in our lab. So we built the wind tower structure, scaled down like 1/100th of the true size there, and then we built the friction well using different type of material, whether it's gravel or it's a solid cement. And then we apply lateral load to it, measure the displacement there from measure the force displacement, and we calculate what is the capacity, maximum load it can take, and what is the stiffness. Okay. Remember, here's the model of the lab test. And here's the foundation, the friction wheel. This one with a gravel in it. Here's the monopile tower, and the upper structure is simplified. And then using a load piston to push it, measure the magnitude of force using load cell, and then measure the lateral movement using an LVDT. And from that, then we can see how different type of foundation will respond to lateral load. So here, the lowest one is just the monopile without any friction wheel. Here's a friction wheel with gravel or crushed stone. And then this one is with cement, a solid one large, like a large disc there. As you can see, the solid one will improve the lateral capacity quite a lot. The one with gravel or crushed stone also can improve significantly in comparison to just the monopile itself. But capacity is one thing that also in terms of its lateral stiffness, how did it change with different deformation? It's also very important. You can see here with different type of structure, we can see how quickly with the deformation, the stiffness drops. And this one, the one with the solid friction wheel, dropped the slowest. So it can maintain, even you have a little bit of lateral movement, it can maintain a very high stiffness. Remember, this scale is log scale, so even there the drop, it looks like small, but it can be an order of magnitude. And then in the future, if we use this technology to build the foundation and the plan is to put lots of sensors on it, monitor its performance once it's installed, with strain gauges to measure the forces, the stress, and then pressure gauge to measure the forces, accelerometers to measure the vibration of the structure. So that is one. But then the other thing is, why can't we learn something from Europe? Because they have done it so many years. So another thing is to look at here's a couple of offshore wind turbine in Denmark, and it's developed by University of Aalborg and a couple of other engineering firms. So we went there to take a look at their foundation. They developed a type of foundation called a universal foundation. And right now, the second phase, we are studying this type of foundation. What it basically is a large cylinder made of steel. So you can pre-manufacture, fabricate it, and you set it on the lake bed, and then you started to vacuum on it. Okay, so you use suction, and the suction itself will push the structure in. And you can put a compartment inside there, so you can control the suction with each compartment. So if you have a little bit inclination, then you increase suction on the other side, and it will correct itself. So you can monitor, and it can be installed pretty quick. Okay. Once it's installed to the bottom there, you can remove your suction and put your upper structure and the weight on it. Sometimes we don't realize that actually the suction, the vacuum can be very high. The load itself can be as high as the load due to the upper structures. So when you release the vacuum, let it settle, and put the upper structure on it, the structure is already subject to that load already when you install it. So the foundation will become pretty safe.
You use the PSIG on the top of it, and on top of that surface, it was forced to push a cylinder down into the ground. So
Right.
And it goes down, and you build up, create a vacuum on top again, and just use the 14.7 psi times the PSIG times that surface area as a force to push it. You're pushing a cylinder down into the ground.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But after you load it, when it consolidated, then you release the vacuum. Okay. And your extra load applied is not higher than the vacuum one. So it's like you already tested your foundation, and you install it. It's much easier. Right. Yeah. So it's easier to install it because it's lighter, and you can float it there, and you just use a very simple Pumps, yeah.
Okay.
So we also did a small-scale model test here. This is in our lab. It's called a centrifuge. It's spin around very quickly. So you use a centrifugal acceleration to simulate the gravity. So you can build a small-scale model that can, using certain simulation rule, you can correspond it to a large, full-size prototype. For example, here are different type of, this type of foundation. Some of them we change the aspect ratio. Some of them we have compartment inside, so we can see what is the best design in terms of its capacity, and then we can optimize the design and can use that in the field. And also, doing small-scale model testing in the lab is very important. First, it's almost impossible to do a full-scale model, full-scale testing in the field. Too expensive. You don't want to build a foundation and create a failure. Right? And then you may ask, how about I use computer simulation? Well, you can do all the computer simulation you want. But once you finish it, you don't know whether it makes sense or not. So if you want to do one, how about simulate this one? We have a very well-controlled environment. We know all the soil property, we know the material property, we know the structure, we know the boundary condition. If you can simulate this one, they build some confidence that you can simulate a more larger field structure. So we did quite a lot of tests. We apply repeated loading to it. Again, here's the model structure. Here's the foundation is installed into the soil, just like we apply the vacuum to it. And then because in the field you have many cycles of load due to the wind, due to the wave. So you apply many cycles of load there to similar type of measurement. And here you can see some of the tests after structure fails by tilting. Okay, and from there, then we can here's a profile of the model. Here's your foundation sunk into the soil, and by using vacuum, push it in your upper structure, you apply load there. And then from that, then you can find out what is the capacity, where it's starting to fail, what is the stiffness, and then you compare different type of design to see which one makes most of the sense. Okay. And we also did a foundation test using our structure slab. As I mentioned earlier, we have through the generous support of our alumni, we built a $4 million structure slab, high bay, large space. There we can test complex structures. For example, one of the tests is the fatigue strength of a section of a wind foundation in Germany. Here's the tower anchored into the concrete foundation, and we applied. Professor Huckabee did the test, applied tens of thousands of cycles of load, where typically in the field it takes 20 years to do that. In the lab, we can control it, we can apply it faster, and we can see how that kind of repeated loading can create a fracture failure in concrete. So our lab is fully equipped to do this type of foundation research. Yeah. All right, so in conclusion, we can see that Lake Erie or the Great Lake regions have great potentials for offshore wind energy, but one of the major challenges in terms of design for the foundation is the ice load. So we have to find ways to mitigate the ice load. We have designed unique type of foundation that can resist this type of ice load. And this is why we are doing research as a university, trying to find out what is the best way, what is the most innovative foundations that can satisfy the requirement of both safety, very important, you don't want to have any failure, and also reduce the cost. Okay. And that's my last slide. So thank you very much. And I can, yeah, ask the question.
Two questions. One is
Sure.
about the ice load.
Uh-huh.
Have you been working with the people, the companies that have put in the Baltic Sea installations because they've already faced ice load, and in fact they've modified their turbine bases to deal with those ice loads because the Baltic is a lot less saline, as you know, from the estuaries that come into it. That's one question. How much do you collaborate with them? And the second one, sorry, is about the suction bucket. And I looked into that foundation. I was quite surprised to see, although they've been around for a decade or so, that Universal Foundation, they've only so far supported oil rigs and met towers, which all do not have that big weight, 100 meters high. And I can't help wondering, are they still meeting that challenge, or will you provide them with the initial example? The only one that was, the only the only wind turbine I saw listed for Universal Foundation is one in Copenhagen Harbour, which when you now Google it, you just can't see it there. So I'm wondering if they took it out. I'm sorry if I got it wrong.
And these are very good questions. I mean, the first one, yes, the engineering firm designed for this project is from Europe, so they have quite a bit of experience there, and they know all these ice loading things. And the second, one of the partners in the project is U.S. Army Corps of Engineering, the Cold Ridge Research Lab. They have lots of measurement of ice loading in Great Lake regions, for example, on bridge piers. Okay. So, and that information, we have both the international experience and also local expertise to get the ice load right. The second one is the Universal Foundation. Yes, it has been around for quite a few years, and these are the Copenhagen Harbor. It's not very far offshore, really. It's only.
I only saw one within the harbor, and that seems.
This one is we can walk into the water, yeah, but it's a pretty near shore.
They're all in the harbor.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's in the water. It's not a very deep water. I think there are a couple of reasons. First, engineer firms always want to use through technology. So monopile, if you can use monopile, I think everyone would try to use monopile because it's a relatively mature technology. You have thousands of foundation built with monopiles, really not available. Right? So using this one means a little bit of risk because there's no field engineering experience matured yet. So this is why they have been trying for many years, and I think they also got a demonstration project in Denmark to use this foundation. I mean, this type of foundation has been used, as you mentioned, in oil industry, used for suction foundation, very similar to the suction foundation for oil platforms. And in terms of this one is actually not the full scale. The full scale you can go diameter 12 meters, 15 meters. So it's pretty large one, and you go 8 meters, 10 meters deep, and looks like a pretty stable foundation. But again, any new technology needed time. Someone has to be the first one to do it. Otherwise, it will be only shown like this one in the lab.
I wonder, in the Great Lakes, there's always water intakes out there.
Yes.
Does anyone go out there and see what happens to them every spring? Do they rebuild them? Or?
Right. There's extra. It's not in my presentation, but there are a couple of pictures showing some of the damaged structures in the lake. But for the water intake, for the Cleveland water, there's no damage because you build it really strong. Again, their cost is not a major issue there, because they can build pretty strong. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's a big structure. Yeah.
Listening to you, the alternative to this whole wind power project is okay. About 10 years from now, we're going to be starting to get the cases in the basin out of the fusion reactor you see Berkeley, so we're going to get some sense of how long it's going to take to have fusion power, which source of energy for what I suspect. So then so you know that number. This is called this Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania is called the Saudi Arabia coal.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how much coal you have. You're going to know how many years it's going to take to get, let's say, disputed power going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the amount of coal you have to burn.
Uh-huh.
You probably got that much coal already.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you just take the money you're putting into this to figure out how to scrub the particulate emissions out of the coal stacks? And people are going to say that CO2 is a bunch of nonsense anyway. So there you go.
This debate we can go out for weeks. This has been going on for many minutes.
I think I look at alternatives.
But my personal opinion is you cannot find one solution to the problem. You have to mix it up with all of them. Because the CO2 thing, whatever you want to call it, global warming, climate change, is out there. You have to see some. I mean, I know there are people say, show me more proof. I mean, whether we are in a natural cycle or man-made, this debate we can go forever, right? But in terms of the fine particles, that one is real. Everybody knows that.
Right,
yeah. So if you want to install new filter technology will recover all this, the cost of coal will go. I mean, coal-fired power plant will go up. Maybe it will become more, maybe competitive with the wind, even the wind without going down the price. So yeah.
Particular matter. Yeah, get that out. No question in the world. You got to get the matter out.
But you see, when EPA want to install more strict control on the coal-fired power plant, there's lots of, lots of feedback here. There's lawsuits right now going through this different level of courts about that. Okay. You have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, coal, but recently coal has been displaced a lot by gas, natural gas.
Right.
And it seems like, I don't know, wind power, geothermal power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have
Solar and solar. Yeah. Yeah.
And China has done wonders. Wind power and the
Solar power.
solar.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, yes, we're careful about 10 years from now, and we have dreamers that eons, this wonderful power that comes from,
Mm-hmm.
this world.
Yeah.
But maybe we better have 20 years, 30 years, because we
Yeah. I mean, you have to try all of them. Right now, really, there's no one single solution because even you do all the solar, even you do all the wind, you still have storage. You haven't solved that problem yet. So there is only a certain capacity that the grid right now can handle renewable energy. Some people put it at 15%, some people put it 20%. I mean, California is now close to 20%. Yeah, and unless you have a very reliable and economical storage technology out there. Yeah, Tesla is one possible tiny little bit of a solution, but it's not the whole picture. And eventually, you still have to rely on combustion for many things. So you cannot get rid of combustion, at least in the near future. Okay, so you have to have all this all together. Have to have a complete package. You cannot just say one can solve everything. Some people did a study, say, let's say solar energy. In order to support the whole U.S. with solar energy, you need to have a solar farm larger than the state of Arizona. Just get rid of Arizona and cover it with solar panel.
But has everybody in here Googled the storm as it was Germany's wind power disaster? Just looked at the whole page after page after page. What happened and large problem being with your wind shear or variable wind velocity, and you can't. And there's no way to adjust it right now. You can't store enough energy. You can't transport enough energy.
How much desertifying and coastal flooding and how many cities are we going to lose to the ocean before you think
Okay,
it's
well,
time we did something?
because of what? You're saying, okay, I'm writing a magazine article on how the gravitational pull of the planets are affecting Earth.
I asked you a
Earth's climate. I
straightforward
think it's all a bunch of
question.
nonsense. You don't have a baseline for measuring the
That's not the topic for today. Okay, we can have another time debate that. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Please. Sorry.
On the Canadian side of Lake Erie, I think we really work like this there.
No. And initially, the Canadians want to build some wind turbine in Lake Ontario. There is more challenge because the water depth is deeper and they have more ice issue there. So that one has been put on hold.
I saw they had a wind funnel technology. They claimed it was 6 times more efficient than the speed blade sails. First, have you investigated that, and how would that change your installation?
No, I have not. Yeah, I've read it, in articles saying that they're developing some of them can be put on the top of the building or something like that. But I still feel that in terms of power density, the wind, you need really large area, large space. And
Not having a moving blade, does that change?
right now, that is still very early because we don't know how large it can go, right? If you have that, you have to give a very big range, yeah. Whether you can scale up or not, still don't know. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
What kind of leading you anywhere about materials and interesting research regarding materials for these applications?
Yes. I mean, for example, one of the major material in terms of material is de-icing. How can you prevent ice from forming on the blades or on the tower itself? Because if you have ice on the tower, your surface will become very, very difficult. So using special type of coating, actually, our polymer science and engineering department is thinking about that type of research. You call the hydrophobic coating. Yeah. If you can prevent ice from forming on the blade, it can be a major advantage. For example, there's a case in Canada. The wind turbine for about 100 days they cannot operate because the ice form on the blade. And of course, there are other examples where
And that's an onshore one where the moisture content in the water available is not even there.
Right. And also they're thinking about how membranes on the blade that you can heat it up using thermal, very very thin thermal blade using the energy generated itself. Right. Yes.
What are the differences between the vertical axis turbine versus the horizontal axis? I know with the vertical axis turbine, you don't have to take the same height, so it's using less torque on the foundation.
Vertical axis. I mean,
The ones that spin.
but most of the wind, if you look at the velocity of wind, most of that is the energy is in the horizontal direction. It still has to go in the horizontal. While in the vertical direction, the velocity is much lower.
Yeah.
It works on a different principle.
Right.
The vertical, you've not seen a vertical one yet?
There's one.
It looks like a airplane propeller.
The
Oh.
entire windmill spins on a vertical.
Isn't that different from a plane?
I mean, a
The
wind.
blades,
Yeah.
the blades are constantly hitting the oncoming wind, but half the time there is opposition. Right?
vertical post rather than
Those are
horizontal.
drag devices versus.
Are they still at a very early stage? I haven't seen anything like that in tool.
They have installed over on the green road,
there must be some.
Yeah, there's
some
one
technical.
about 82 and old 82.
So I don't know exactly what is the challenge there. I mean, otherwise they would use it in not. I mean, there are other. For example, they change the two blades. There are one environmental wise using two blades, and for example, NASA has used it. Some people use four.
This is like the old World War II airplane propeller, where you had 2 blades, 3 blades.
Right.
Wait, it seems like they settle around 3.
Yeah, this fund is in terms of utilization of the energy is probably the best. Yeah.
What are
Yes.
the wind velocities that you're dealing with, when do they shut turbine down?
Yeah.
Three on the shoreway.
So the wind velocity, I mean, the average out there can be 8 to 12 meters per second. I have seen, the blade can work up to like 20, 25 meters per second, and above that you have to put a brake on it, and then reach a certain level, you have to stop it.
Time for maybe one more question. Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Thank you, Dr. Zeng.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.